Hi, I'm Steve Chernosky, and this is Tap Into You, a new podcast on regional issues brought to you by TAPinto Flemington Raritan, your neighborhood news online. The COVID-19 pandemic, a hotly contested presidential election, and a very adversarial national political environment combined to create multiple obstacles in the 2020 election cycle. Governor Murphy issued an executive order that the new November 2020 election would take place entirely with mail-in ballots. In New Jersey, registered voters wishing to vote in person at the polls would only be able to do so with provisional ballots. All of this combined to create great challenges and difficulties, and it was left to county clerks and board of elections to deal with those issues. In Hunterdon County, it was County Clerk Mary Melfi and Board of Elections Administrator Beth Thompson who were called upon in a short time frame to address those challenges. Despite all these obstacles, their teamwork resulted in 86% voter turnout, a record for the state this year. Uh, Mary, Beth, welcome to both of you. How's everybody doing?
Good,
Good.
good.
So, Mary, maybe we'll start with you. Can you tell us a little background about yourself?
Sure. I was elected. I started in the position of county clerk on January 1st, 2007. I am now in my third term, and I ran on the platform of connecting the clerk to the county. I've done educational programs. I've helped people run for election, done outreach, passport outreach with hours, veterans programs. We've done the Searching the Search Room. A lot of our programs with the COVID have been put on hold, obviously, but we can't wait till everybody's back in a normal world. Uh, I've been active in our organizations. I was past president of the Constitutional Officers Association of New Jersey, past president of the New Jersey Association of Counties, and I currently hold the position of legislative liaison for the constitutional officers of New Jersey, which is very active in legislation affecting county clerks, registers, surrogates, and sheriffs. So I'm very pleased to be
Get the
invited
resume,
tonight, and I'm glad to be a part of this panel.
Thank you, Mary. So, Beth, how about yourself?
So I started at the Board of Elections in 2007 as a registration clerk and became the administrator when my predecessor retired in 2011. So I have been the administrator of the Board of Elections since 2011. I am currently the first vice president of the New Jersey Association of Election Officials, and I am also a co-chair of the Legal and Legislative Committee, which works directly with legislators to work on bills that directly affect how people vote, how we administer elections. We have a small staff, but we're mighty, and we're proud to serve the people of Hunterdon County.
Well, thank you. And to our first question, what were the biggest challenges in converting to all mail balloting? And unless I'll go from one to the other person, but I guess were there any mistakes and how'd you correct them? And then what were the big differences between the general and primary? So I guess what was the biggest challenges converting to all mail balloting, Mary?
Well, the primary was a bigger challenge because
Interesting.
it's a much tighter time frame. Because putting the ballot together is a lot tighter. The general ballot's more set, the candidates. The other problem was when the governor let us know it was actually going to happen. There was so much, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? When's he going to let us know? The primary is also not open to all voters. It's a closed primary, so Republicans and Democrats vote. And so versus the general, every active voter got a ballot. So it was a lot easier to, you knew every active voter was getting a ballot versus just Republicans and Democrats. So, and we weren't ready with supplies. There were a lot of challenges getting it ready on my end because my responsibilities as county clerk are putting the ballot together, printing the ballots, getting the ballots ready to mail, and then mailing them. And that's my role. And then of course, Beth and the Board of Elections takes over once they're out the door. So, those were my challenges, was getting the supplies, getting the ballot laid out, and getting them out the door. And it was also a federal an election. So a federal election requires a 45-day mail out prior to election date. They did give us a little leeway on the ballots within the state. They gave us an executive order to tighten it to 38 days, which gave us some breathing room. And then, of course, it was just voter confusion.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine. And Beth, does that hold true to you too? Was the primary a little more stressful than the general in the beginning?
So I think for us, the primary was really about the people who were unaffiliated, and the way that the unaffiliated people were handled. They were all sent applications. And in order, normally when an unaffiliated person votes at the polls, they have the option they choose, and then we update their party after they do voter history.
Right.
This was a kind of a flip where, a voter requested a ballot, then we had to change their party first in order for the clerk to issue the ballot. So it was a kind of a reversal. And the amount of confirmations that we had to do for people's parties, it was enormous. And only having a full-time staff of 4 this whole year, put into perspective, our need for space, our need for additional personnel. So, and then moving the primary, having it, kind of go through January into July, dealing with a holiday weekend, and all of those things, combined, really, it was tight, like very, very tight. Then moving into the general, you have to understand from our perspective, the most we'd ever processed in an election for mail-in ballots, I think, happened during Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
And, we were overwhelmed. The rules were different during Hurricane Sandy, but the most that we had ever dealt with really in any election was between 10 and 12,000 ballots. Now you're talking, in the primary, we received and processed 31,000, and we thought that was extreme. And then, fast forward to the general, we rethought a lot of the things and the mistakes that we learned from the primary on, how to process these, how much personnel we needed. We did then almost 86,000, mail-in ballots. And on top of that, you're dealing with COVID, you're dealing with keeping your people safe and healthy, and trying to deal with the public, who wanted to, do a face-to-face with you. So, we restructured our office. We had, a new foyer built with plexiglass. We had extended hours. We had, a completely different way to handle the public. We had a full-time person at the counter, which we had never had before. So for us, it was, it was really about the volume. It was getting enough people to work, doing all kinds of shift work, and and then being able to have the space and secure everything, once it came into the building. So we did learn a lot from the primary into the general, but I think voter confusion was the hardest thing we had to deal with on an everyday basis.
Yeah, and if people, oh, go ahead, Mary.
No, and in the general election, we had a little bit more heads up on that. And like I said, the ballot was more settled. We did make some changes so, we could get the ballot to print. But, Beth and I, we're blessed that we respect each other. We like each other. We have a great working relationship, and it was just like, let's get this done. And it was just like, how are we going to do this? Because we mailed out in excess of 100,000 ballots, and I was just like, I'm not letting them out of my sight. I didn't send them out to a mail house. I didn't want my ballots touched by anybody else.
Right.
So what I did was I reached out to my buddies, the municipal clerks and their staffs, and I put out an SOS, and I said, does anybody want to help? And we came up with a great crew. It was municipal clerks, deputy clerks, utility clerks, tax assessors, tax collectors, just people that work in the 26 municipalities coming together, and we just had people working part-time, they come in after, working in their own municipality all day. And so we started Labor Day and we had all all 100,000 ballots out in 2 weeks. And we worked, every weekend, those 2 weekends. And I keep saying to Beth, Beth, we got another 20,000 ballots out. And and she's running around trying to get the ballot boxes out because the people, I had the ballots out before she had all the ballot boxes in place. So it
Well,
was.
yeah, I'd like to talk about that. So the primary is supposed to be in June and is delayed because of all of what you've talked about. Just more time goes into July, and so what I'm hearing on one hand is the primary was a bigger challenge on your end because of the shorter window. I mean, it's fair to say less controversial. I mean, I guess there's county primaries that, like in my town in Lambertville, which were hotly contested. That was the election essentially for municipal office, but maybe not as contentious as the general. But there you had more practice. And where do the ballot boxes come in? Like the ballot boxes aren't there in the primary, are they? Like when I'm saying ballot boxes, I mean the secure ballot drop boxes that the county, the state says we originally get 4, right? And then
5.
Oh, 5. So how did the rollout of that? What's the timeline on the rollout of the ballot boxes? When did they go in? I remember putting mine in September for the general, but so, what do you do when the ballot boxes come in? Like when the governor says, we're going to do these secure mail boxes, like, are you calling the phone again saying, team, we got another game here?
Yeah. Yeah, it was an effort that we worked with our buildings and grounds, and Mary and I worked with the mayors, and we worked with the lead people in the towns. We had to figure it out, based on population, which was going to be the easiest for people to
Right.
access. So we had started off with a smaller amount, and as legislation grew, as executive orders grew within those timeframes, then we were originally tasked with at least 5, and then it grew to 10. And then it was based on the population. So,
Okay.
As we figured out, we started off with kind of central, north, south, east, and west. It just kind of grew. So we had originally Lambertville was one of the first places that we picked
Yeah.
because that was in the south. And we had picked Holland and Reddington. And then we did Glen Gardner and then the library in Raritan. And then after the next round came through and we got more boxes, then we became a little bit more strategic based on population. And that took a concerted effort by the sheriff's department. So if you can imagine, those ballots need to be picked up every day.
Yeah.
And we had 2 members of the sheriff's department doing it with body cameras. They had video cameras on them when they picked them up, and then they would bring the boxes back to us and then unload. And the boxes got switched out, and then it was done every single day. So it was, and then especially even on election day, we did it, I believe, twice a day. And then we had to have personnel there at 8 p.m. on election day to actually lock the box and then bring all of the boxes back to close them down on election day. And we did the majority of the returns came from those ballot boxes. I would say about 65 to 70% of the ballots that we got back put in those ballot boxes.
Well, I mean, nobody trusted the post office.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I heard the news. Yeah, especially like our neighbors are basically in Pennsylvania, and that was a different story. They were like, "I'm not touching the post office." A lot of the New Hope friends that I had talked to.
But Beth and I sat with the county map with the pins, and we were pinning, and we're looking like, we put one in Franklin Township because everybody uses, I don't know the route number, 619, whatever, from Clinton to Flemington. So it was, you could drive that, 523 from White House to Flemington. You could stop in Reddington, but Reddington has the population. But, and primaries, you're right. Lambertville City Council was the race.
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
if you were, I hate to be blunt, but in the Democratic primary, the only race to watch was Democratic City Council.
Yeah.
I mean, on the Republican side, we had a race for the U.S. Senate, and we had a race for the Congress, the House of Reps.
Yeah.
So anywhere else, it's sad, but there's, what's on the ballot.
Well, it was good. Sounds like it was good warm up. You know, you answered my other question. I was wondering if you had like little green army men like on the map saying this is where we're gonna put them, but you use pins, so that was good to that. So you answered that. So so audience has good visual then. So my next question is, you know, you were the first. Hunterdon was the first state with voter turnout at 75% in 2016, and we're the first again, but that number's from 75% jumped to 86%. What do you attribute the very high turnout rate to in the county? Could be demographics, but I mean, like, what there's got to be other stuff going on, right?
Well, I think we're strong in voter education. I think we're strong in voter outreach. I mean, Beth and I reached out to the press. We're very open and transparent. We invited the press into our operations. Um, right, Beth? I
Yeah,
mean,
social media was huge, you know, doing the videos on how to vote your mail ballot, making sure that people understood, you know, that was the biggest thing is, you know, that, you know, first it, you know, I think it began with anger. People thought
Yeah,
that they were disfranchised, that they were losing their right to vote, and we needed to
we'll get in
explain
that. Yeah,
they weren't losing their right to vote. They were losing the way their choice on how they were voting was taken away, and they needed to understand the difference and understand the integrity of what happens behind the scenes and how the mail ballot is counted and you know how it worked. And it took a lot of encouragement from both the clerk side and our side to get for people to understand that and trust um, that this is something that we've done for years and years and years, and that the secures the you know the security that we had in place would match the same thing that we would do with a voting machine. So I think that you know with Mary's you know constant posts on Facebook and you know just getting people you know when they were on the telephone to kind of talk them down, so to speak, and you know they would start off kind of panicky, and then we had kind of a script to get them to understand, you know, okay, we get it. You're a little bit nervous. You've never done this before. So we had a lot of people then who we would transfer back to the clerk because they took that mail ballot, threw it in the garbage because they said, oh, I'm not doing that. And then, you know, they would go back to the clerk and get a reissue. So I think that that was huge for us. I think that, you know, that we've got a connected community in Hunterdon and we're smaller. So I think between both parties and all of the people that were connected in our office, I think it just kind of spread. And, you know, people began to trust. And once they learned that they could drop off their ballot in person, use a drop box, we gave them, you know, Mary set up this awesome place outside of her office so that people could sit outside on a picnic table, vote their
mm,
ballot. There was just
wow.
things that we gave people so that they could trust in the whole process from start to finish. Um,
and I think, you know, one of the things that we went through, and I'm, you know, I've been on this soapbox since last year with this election, is one of the things that if I had been on the governor's staff, if I was his chief counsel, I never would have allowed a universal vote by mail. It would have
Mm,
been, I would have mailed applications and I would have had an application vote by mail, because the problem is that the statewide voter registration system is, it wasn't ready to have everybody in it get a ballot. And what I mean by that is New Jersey is very dependent on the voter. You know, you're not allowed to delete a voter. And that's where you saw the postings on Facebook about the dead voters and the kid, you know, the kids that had moved out of the house 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and they were still getting ballots. And that's where, you know, that's where all this distrust with the fraud, and it's not fraud, it's just that, you know, you can't say to people, you've been accepting sample ballots. We think the person's still in your house, you know, and I, you know, I said to people, um, you know, what would you think? You know, I live in a split household too. My
mm,
other half is of the other side. So what if I called up Beth and said, you know, take him off the rolls? And, you know, he goes to the polls to vote and he's deleted. And, you know, that's not right. And that's why there's checks and balances with the Board of Election in New Jersey. And so I guess what we learned from this is we're going to really try this year to do reach out to voters, to have voters look at their own profiles, look at their households. Have you been getting a sample ballot for your child that doesn't live there anymore? Well, that means they're still active. You know, get them off the rolls, right, Beth? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
that would
Yeah.
be our big message tonight, right?
Yeah.
Help us.
Yeah, help us. And that's, you have to remember that as we've transitioned with technology, when you first registered to vote years and years ago, you provided your month and the year that you were born, or you just provided an address. And a lot of those times, the birth dates were incorrect. There was a lot of missing information. So, as people pass, we rely on the Department of Human Services to give us that information. We're directly connected to them, but the statewide registration system doesn't work the way that it should. If we've got a misspelling, if your birth date is incorrect or hasn't been updated, all of those things kind of play into place. And again, the sample ballot comes directly from the active registration rolls. And a lot of people think that that's just kind of junk mail. So when they get the sample ballot, it went in the garbage. But when they actually got a real ballot this time, people really, it resonated with them that, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You're sending a ballot to my son who hasn't lived here in 20 years, or my, my dead mother or father, or things like that went on. And again, it was not, done in any kind of way, but, from what we've got in our system. And it really does require a signature to cancel or a return piece of mail. And once we inactivate you, you stay on the roll for 2 more years through 2 federal elections. So it's really a difficult thing for people to understand that when they are in the midst of moving and they're leaving the state and their life's in chaos, that one of the things that they need to do is actually cancel their voter registration. We think about canceling the cable and the electric bill and all of those things that we do when we leave our home, but canceling our voter registration is usually not one of them. And again, we rely on the post office to provide us with forwarding orders, but it doesn't usually happen.
Yeah, it's got to be a mess. I mean, I on one hand, I can understand it from the governor's point of view, like making access to voting should be easier. I'm hearing the whispers of his administration, of course, like voting access should be easier, not more restrictive. So getting into, you mentioned there was some, like what also made 2020 different was, of course, the contested presidential election and the fear by some that there was fraud or whatnot going on. And I have this question here. So including people at the January 19th protest at the county courthouse were saying that County Commissioner Director Sue Soloway was also speaking out against you and your team, words from someone there, that, she was involved in a protest against the outcome of the election. Yet it talked at length about how well the county did in making sure the ballots were secure and the outcome fairly processed. I mean, how do you respond to that? Like, what is it that you do for the county to put a check on any potential ballot fraud that you might see? And I know you mentioned like getting people there and having them at a table, filling out with you, like this is how you fill it out. But like, and certainly social media, but like, what do you do to like, for viewers and listeners to like, explain how you put a check on any potential fraud?
So for us, if you can imagine, when you go to a polling place, normally you've got a poll book, and inside the poll book, after you state your name and your address, the poll worker will find you in the book, flip it over, you sign your name, they turn it around, and they look at your signature. So the same process with a mail-in ballot is exactly what we would do at a polling place. We take that certificate, we look at your signature, and then we physically go into your voter profile and compare the signature that you have on file with a signature that we have on file. So however you signed your name on the certificate, we would actually look at that and compare the two. If there wasn't a match, legislation again came into play. We would offer you what we call a ballot signature cure. And that signature cure required you to provide us with identification that needed to match, because we have direct access to validate your social security number and your driver's license number. So that security measure has always been in place. It's not something that we take lightly. You may or may not be aware, but there was, we did hand over one person in the state who we knew did commit fraud in our county, and we handed that case over to the prosecutor. So, those are the type of things that, we took that very seriously as, and again, that is just a basic, simple processing procedure. And we had tons of people whose signatures didn't match. They didn't return a signature cure letter either because it was too much for them, or they didn't understand, or the mail didn't process it properly. But those are the ways that, we will determine whether or not, a voter has voted their own ballot. Just the same way that, we require someone to sign in the poll book at the polls to ensure that their signature matches. And then if their signature doesn't match, a poll worker challenges them, asks them for identification. It's the same procedure that we are doing with a mail ballot that we would do at the polling place. So that's
and the other thing was, Beth saw a tremendous amount. I mean, there was lines out the door with people returning their ballot directly to the Board of Elections because they wanted to hand their ballot in. Now, the funny thing about the law, it's really a goofy law, but you can walk into my office and complete a vote by mail ballot application. And I look at that application and I do a screening of it. I go in and I have that front end as just like Beth does, is I look at your application, I look at your signature on file, and if it matches, I issue that ballot. And I would issue that ballot, and if everything's fine, you can walk out with the ballot. Now, if you choose to vote that ballot in my office, and I'm talking under normal circumstances, if we weren't under COVID, you decide you want to vote that ballot in my office and return it in the ballot box in my office, you have to show me ID. So that's what the law requires when you're returning the ballot in my office or at the Board of Elections, which we didn't return ballots at my office this year. We returned them at the board. You had to show ID. So, of course, there were lots of people that were very, very happy to show you their ID when they returned their ballot. So though they were lined up at the Board of Elections showing you their ID.
Yeah,
and
we had 6,000 people that did that, 6,000 or 7,000 people that did that for this election in person.
And the other thing is, at the end of the day, every county was under a mandatory audit. We had to, Beth, you can explain the audit process, but we all, every county and Hunterdon as well, we had to pull so many ballots and hand count them against the machine, right?
Oh.
Yeah. So
a lot of coffee.
Yeah. And I would say, the same rigorous pre-election testing that we do on the voting machines, we do on the vote by mail machine, so that we ensure that when you fill out your bubble on your mail-in ballot, that when it reads it in a scanning system similar to an SAT test, that we do this pre-election testing to ensure, and that's required by law, to ensure that when you're filling in that bubble, that matches who the candidate of your choice. And then on top of that, we have a secondary system that actually adjudicates a ballot, where if there's a mark on there that doesn't belong, or the ballot is, if there is any kind of write-in, it takes pictures of the ballots, and then in a separate room, the board would actually look at it, adjudicate it, and there's 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans on the board, so that and we have kind of a strange situation in Hunterdon, not something that we are proud of, but a lot of people decide to write their own name in on a ballot.
Well, Frenchtown elected a mayor with a write-in, didn't they?
Correct, but these are voters who write themselves in, and normally.
Way to go, Hunterdon.
Yeah. So normally in an election, counties would adjudicate about 2% of the ballots based on write-ins. We had about 11 to 12% of our ballots had to be adjudicated for people writing their own name in on a ballot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of
work. My God.
They do that because it's a way to make sure that their ballot was counted.
Oh, all right. So that goes into the highly educated county thing that you were telling me before. Okay. Yep. There you go.
So yeah, so so that was kind of a struggle, and we had purchased this adjudication software through a grant to make it easier on us, because in the primary election, when we did the write-ins, how many books did we give you with write-ins, Mary, in the
Oh,
primary?
gosh, I had like 8 books. I mean, just page after page after page of write-ins.
Yeah. So with the adjudication, it was all supposed to be done, through the computer system where you would put the name in. And our board spent about 150 to 200 hours adjudicating 11% of the 86,000 ballots, because people had written in their own names. There were just some legitimate write-ins, but our county is very creative with names, and some of them not so nice, some of them, kind of funny, but it is a huge waste. And we, move forward, one of the things that we would love for people to do is really take the write-in ballot seriously. It's not something that we have to ignore. We have to actually look at that write-in, and we would love for voters to understand that if you're going to do the write-in, do it for a serious candidate, because the nonsense, it makes our jobs really, really tough, especially when we're moving forward with something like that. So yeah.
And so keeping on the contested part of the election, which probably made this year, along with the pandemic, probably, I guess I'm just guessing, maybe the most difficult year of your lives in your current positions. So there were some very close elections. There was a very close municipal race in Flemington where the winners changed as more votes were counted. And then we got a tip that there was ballot irregularities that affected Clintontown municipal race. I believe the Republican challenger lost there by 3 votes, and there was some possible ballot irregularities. Is there anything you can comment on that issue in Clintontown?
So I'd rather not comment on that, just because it's in litigation right now. So that's still an ongoing contest. I can tell you, we did do a hand recount of the election that was made public. And there is an actual filing of a to contest the election. So that is ongoing right now. So I don't really want to comment any further, but we did have an open and public forum, and our board did recount every single solitary ballot in the presence of those who wish to be present in the courtroom. And each voter had 1 additional vote added to the count. Because 2 voters decided to fill out their ballots in red, which is something that most
teachers.
people they don't. I don't think every single person reads the directions. If you vote your ballot in red, the scanner cannot read any of your votes. It does not have the ability to read red pen. So those ballots were scanned and no votes were counted from those ballots, because they just cannot read red ink. So the people that voted those didn't pay attention. So it did not change the outcome. But again, that election is still being contested in court.
Okay. And so I guess one of my last questions is, as a teacher for over 20 years in the state of New Jersey, many of my current students right now are going to be voting soon in their first election in the next handful of years. And I guess I do wonder how their history background. I'm looking at this long term. I wonder how their long-term perceptions on election integrity have been affected by growing up in this environment. What would you say to younger people who maybe the parents made them watch this? I don't know, who will be exercising their right to vote for the first time in the next couple of years? What advice would you give to first-time voters in the next couple of years, if they are questioning, oh well, things are corrupt, or the election process is, we don't want teenagers to be too cynical yet and have that last. Like, there's the period of cynicism, and then they grow out of it, and then they become hopeful, and then they get cynical when they get older again, right? Like, I'm half joking, but like, how do you convince young people that the process has
when I go over to Hunterdon Central a lot and go to the AP Gov class, which is like one of my favorite things to do. I love being with those, and I've seen, being in here for 15 years, I've seen them come in and register to vote, and they've been off, and some of them have gone on to really like stayed in political science careers. But I go in and talk to them, and it's fun, because I can, my belief is, one of the things that's really disheartening to me is the amount of people that want to vote for president of the United States. And to me, a mayor can do a lot more harm to you than the president of the United States. You know, I mean, I really think local government and even your state government, because I mean, local government is something that is hands-on. That is more of a grassroots thing that you can really control. Um, I tell the kids, you know, take a look at your ordinances in town, you know, and on a state level, you know, we look up the government, you know, the driver's licenses and, you know, and all the different laws they make. I said, take a look at this. You know, this is your legislature that's making up these rules. You know, if you like them, fine, you vote for these people. If you don't, you don't, you know, but this is, the President of the United States doesn't affect this stuff, your local government, your state government. And the other thing I tell them to do is I encourage them to register to be an unaffiliated voter. And I think unaffiliated voters have the ability to go into a primary. You always can vote in a primary. You're not locked into a party. You can vote for a candidate. You can choose and then come out of the primary and re-register back unaffiliated. In the general election, you can always choose. You can go back and forth and pick all your candidates. If the day comes that you choose you want to be a Democrat or a Republican because you really want to be associated that way, that's fine. But, you know, to me, I tell the, you know, I mean, for the girls, I say it's like always having a little black dress to wear to the party when you're unaffiliated. You know, it's, you know, you get to a point where, you know, if you were a Republican in Lambertville, you had no say in who's going to run your city government.
Yeah, no, I know a lot of people that just register Democrats.
Right.
So, but when you're saying unaffiliated, when you vote in that primary, that registers you for that party, right?
If you were, if I was an unaffiliated voter in Lambertville for that primary, I could have walked into the polls, or I would have gotten that application and I would have declared myself Democrat and I would have gotten the Democratic ballot.
Right.
I would have voted for whoever I wanted in that contest. Following the primary, I would have taken myself back unaffiliated.
It's a lot of extra steps. It's a case for having an open primary, huh? Like
Kind of,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a trick, you
yeah.
know, but there's lots of people that
But
do
no, that
that.
is a good no. That is no that like if people do want to do that, like and you just mentioned Lambertville, like you know there used to be Republican mayors. Like that's an issue. Like if you're in a party that's dominated by but in a town by one party that's dominated, that's a good trick. And yeah, that's good for young people to know. Beth, what about you?
And I think for us, you know, we get to register kids as soon as they turn 17 when they get their driver's license. It becomes
Oh,
automatic
yeah.
because we have a, you know, because of legislation and motor voters, as soon as you get your driver's license, you're automatically registered. Any driver's license transaction in the state of New Jersey automatically registers you to vote. So when the kids turn 17, you know, my thoughts for them are, you know, they can't wait to become adults. Once they turn 18, this is the one independent thing. You always have to listen to what your parents tell you to do. Voting is the most private and personal thing that you could ever do, and it's your choice. And I think the thing that you know discourages them is not you know understanding. And I agree totally 100%. Vote local. You know what I mean? Like it's disappointing for us because we put as much work into every single election, whether there's you know 10% turnout or there's 86% turnout. We still need to abide by the same rules, the same guidelines, the same costs. Um, Everything goes into it, no matter you know how many people show up and vote. So encouraging people to vote in you know the off year elections, you know when you know there isn't someone big on the ticket, when you're voting for your common you know your council, your township committee, your mayors. I think it's really important to encourage young people to look at local government, you know give them the opportunity. And I think you know kids want instant gratification, and you know we don't have a lot of you know high tech you know technology when it comes to voting. It is old school. You know our machines are old. We hope to upgrade them within the next few years. So it's not I sometimes think you know they would rather vote on their phone on the internet, but we're not there. I don't think we'll ever be there. But I want you know kids to understand that even though it's old school, it's still secure. They may not understand the technology, but it's a very personal, independent thing that they can do. And it's something that, no one can tell them how to vote. No one should have to tell them how to vote. And they can vote any way they want to. And I think that, when you turn 18, those are things that kids want to do, and encouraging them at 17 to have that voter card, and knowing that at 18 they can make those choices is great. And then having a county clerk that will mail you a ballot anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world, when you leave home and go to college, is exceptional. And we want them to understand that, because they're mobile, even if they study abroad, that anywhere that they go, we want these kids to take advantage of the fact that they can get a ballot from the county clerk no matter where they go in their life. And then when they relocate after they graduate, then they can cancel their registration and re-register in their new state.
Don't forget to do that.
No, yeah, that's a good point. I guess now that I think about it, a lot of college kids, their first ballot they ever vote in what is going to be a lot of times out of state. My first was a mail-in from Ohio.
Yeah.
What about, so this probably is not a big problem in Hunterdon, but what about a kid that doesn't have a driver's license? I'm thinking like a kid in Hudson County that says, I
He's
don't
got a
want
social security number.
Yeah.
So just the card, just the social card does it?
Yeah, so now we have, and one of the other challenges that we faced in the November election was the onset of online voter registration for the state of New Jersey. So it's oversight is done by the Secretary of State, but now if you've got a Social Security card, you can sign your own signature on a device, or capture a picture of your signature. If you do it with your driver's license, it'll take your driver's license signature, but you can actually now register online. You never have to leave home. So there were a lot. I mean, we had thousands of people that, weren't sure if they were registered or not. So we had plenty of people that did duplicates. A lot of the college kids wanted their ballot mailed to different locations. So you really don't need a driver's license to register. As long as you have a Social Security number, you can register to vote in the state of New Jersey.
So I guess final question, was this the most difficult year of your lives in your current positions?
I would have to say absolutely. It was, I think it was challenging. It was informative. I think we had a lot of fun. We had to make it fun. We would, when you have a bunch of people in a room, all wearing masks, trying to talk, trying to work, bumping into each other, trying to be safe.
A good sitcom waiting in there for this. There is a good sitcom.
Yeah, you had to remain calm, but you had to, be strategic. It was, I think our families, it was a little tough on them being away for so long, but it was good. Being home during the first part of the year, trying to work from home, we gave up on that, and we knew, we weren't going to be able to function from a home office. So being at work every single day, I think it gave us a better perspective than a lot of the people, I think, who were working from home, suffering from depression, not having interpersonal contact with people. I think that really helped a lot. Believe it or not, that was like the best part of being in this job, is actually being able to communicate with people and not being stuck inside my house, for months at a time, because, there was no place to go. So I think that really, and we were able to support local businesses with food orders getting brought in. And, that part of it, I think was great. Even though it was difficult, there was a lot of things that we got to do to talk to people and meet people, and the encouragement we had, just a lot of people call and just say thank you. So that was the good part. So it wasn't.
And I was really proud of Hunterdon in the 86%.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I mean, every day banging away, because call after call, I'm going to the polls, and I'd be like, no, don't go to the polls. Your vote's not going to get counted for 11 days. Why?
Right.
Do you
Yeah. The
want
provisionals.
that?
Yeah. Yep.
And there was just so much distrust with this, and
Yes.
and that's why, we opened our doors up, come see how we do this. Everything was cameraed. Every room was cameraed. Everything we did was under camera and opened, and here's what we do, and here's how we do it, and here's who did it. have, have faith and, there was no doubt in my mind what Beth and I and the people that worked with us, we were very proud of what we did and proud of Hunterdon County for coming through for us. And there, Terrence McDonald, I guess he's a reporter
Oh,
for
yeah.
the
Yeah,
Record.
follow him on Twitter. Yeah.
He kept calling, and he'd say, you're still number one. You're still number one. You're still number one. What are you doing down there? What are you doing down there? You're still number one.
No, hey, I mean, let's go for 90 next in what, in 2024. Let's go for 9. That's gonna be a tough haul. I mean, but who knows? I mean, but all right. So again, my name is Steve Chernosky, and this is Tap Into You, a new podcast on regional issues brought to you by Tap Into Flemington Raritan, your neighborhood news online. I've been joined by Hunterdon County Clerk Mary Melfi and Hunterdon County Board of Elections Administrator Beth Thompson. Ladies, thank you very much for joining us on Tap Into You.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Stay safe.
You too. And hey, have a good vacation. It sounds like you need it.
We'll be in Flemington.
Oh, beautiful Flemington. Yeah. It is developing. Yes.
You got it. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.